The chandelier glittered like 1,000 tiny suns above the ballroom, throwing gold over every diamond and champagne glass. To anyone watching, the Beaumont Gala was perfection. Wealth, elegance, legacy. But for Lena Hartwell Beaumont, 7 months pregnant and clutching the hem of her gown, it was a nightmare waiting to unfold. Every smile felt like a blade. Every whisper, a dagger hidden behind crystal laughter. Her mother-in-law, Vivienne Beaumont, queen of Boston society, stood across the room like marble, flawless and cold. She hadn't said a word to Lena since the tabloid headline that morning, "Pregnant designer steals charity funds." A lie, planted by someone inside the family. Lena's husband, Lucas, was supposed to defend her. Instead, he stood beside his mother, adjusting his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. When their eyes met, his look wasn't love. It was apology mixed with cowardice. The air around them thickened with silent judgment. Dahlia Pierce, the family's glamorous PR director, floated past, her red gown like a warning sign. She leaned close to Lena, voice dripping honey and venom. "Smile, sweetheart. Cameras love a strong woman pretending she's not breaking." Then she glided away before Lena could answer. A tremor ran through Lena's hands. She pressed her palm over her belly. Her son kicked, as if sensing her fear. The orchestra played something soft and cruelly elegant. Vivienne clinked her glass for attention, ready to begin her annual speech. Lena took a step back, wishing she could vanish into the marble walls. But then, as the spotlight swung across the hall, it stopped for a beat, right on her. Dozens of phones lifted. She felt exposed, fragile, hunted. Vivienne's painted smile widened. "And of course," she said sweetly, "our family's newest member, my dear daughter-in-law Lena, who has brought quite a lot of attention lately." Laughter rippled through the guests, polite but poisonous. Lena swallowed her tears. She'd survived whispers before, but tonight felt different. Tonight, something deliberate was unfolding. Across the room, she caught Dahlia whispering to an event coordinator, pointing subtly toward her. A flash of movement. 2 security men adjusting the hallway lights near the backstage door. The music changed to a waltz. Vivienne raised her glass once more, her diamonds catching the light. "Some stains," she murmured loud enough for nearby tables. "Just don't wash out, no matter how expensive the dress." The laughter grew sharper, echoing off the chandeliers. Lena turned toward the exit, the humiliation burning through her like fire. Then she noticed it. One of the hallway cameras above the stage had stopped blinking. Its tiny red light, once steady, had gone dark. Something was about to happen, and someone had made sure no one would see it. The music drifted into another elegant waltz as waiters glided through the ballroom carrying trays of champagne. Guests laughed, oblivious to the invisible storm gathering behind the velvet curtains. Lena tried to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a rhythm out of place in a room built for control. Dahlia appeared beside her again, smiling too brightly. "There's a problem with your dress," she whispered, brushing invisible dust off Lena's shoulder. "A little stain. Red ink, maybe." Vivienne noticed. "She wants you to come backstage so we can fix it before photos start." "You know how she hates imperfection." Lena froze. "Red ink?" She'd barely touched anything but a glass of water all night. "I don't think." Dahlia's smile didn't waver. "Please. It's best to handle it quietly." Her tone was gentle, but her hand tightened on Lena's arm. There was no choice. Guests were watching. Vivienne's eyes, cold and gleaming across the room, seemed to say, "Do it." Lena followed Dahlia past the buffet tables and down a narrow corridor lined with portraits of long-dead Beaumont ancestors. The laughter from the ballroom faded, replaced by the low hum of air vents and the faint buzz of stage lights. Behind them, 2 security men fell into step. Tall, silent, expressionless. They reached a door marked "Staff Only." Dahlia pushed it open, revealing a small backstage storage area filled with gowns, cleaning supplies, and a single mirror surrounded by dim bulbs. Waiting inside were 2 of Vivienne's sisters-in-law, socialites wrapped in silk and superiority. "There she is," one of them said, feigning concern. "Poor thing, you've made quite the headline this week." Lena's voice trembled. "This isn't necessary. There's no stain." "Vivienne just wants to be sure," Dahlia replied smoothly, closing the door behind her. The click of the lock was soft but final. Lena's stomach turned. The 2 security guards stood near the exit, blocking her path. "Please," she said, voice cracking. "I'm pregnant." I don't feel well. Oh, we'll be gentle, Dahlia said with mock sympathy. Just take off your jacket. Let's see what all the fuss is about. Lena backed toward the mirror, clutching her shawl tight around her shoulders. I said no. Dahlia's smile faltered for the first time. Her eyes hardened. Don't make this difficult, Lena. We're trying to protect the family name. Do you really want another scandal? The words hit her like a slap. She thought of the article, the whispers, the way Lucas had stood silent when she'd begged him to deny the rumors. This is cruel, she whispered. One of the women stepped forward. What's cruel is dragging our name through the dirt. If you have nothing to hide, prove it. Lena's pulse roared in her ears. She turned toward the door. Open it. Now. Dahlia blocked her path, her perfume sharp and suffocating. You're shaking, she murmured. That's guilt, darling. Before Lena could respond, the hallway lights flickered. A brief blackout, then a dim, yellow emergency bulb overhead. For a split second, Dahlia glanced upward, irritated. Why is maintenance such a disaster? None of them noticed Grace, the quiet catering assistant, slipping through the side door with a tray of glasses. She froze at the sight before her. A pregnant woman cornered by socialites and guards. Instinct told her to back away, but the fear in Lena's eyes made her stay. Grace set the tray down silently and reached into her apron for her phone. As the argument escalated, Grace hit record. The red dot on her screen blinked faintly in the shadows. Then Dahlia said it, the line that would soon destroy her. Take off the coat, Lena. We need to make sure you're clean. The guard stepped forward. Lena's breath caught in her throat, and the recording kept rolling. The air inside the storage room turned heavy, thick with perfume and tension. The single mirror's bulbs flickered, throwing slices of yellow light over polished heels and trembling hands. Lena stood motionless, her shawl clutched like armor. The two socialite women hovered near the racks of gowns, whispering in cruel amusement. Dahlia's smile had vanished completely now, replaced by the kind of cold determination that only came from power unchecked. Let's not make a scene, Dahlia said softly, stepping closer. We'll be done in a minute. Just remove the jacket and let us check. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. You have no right. Dahlia laughed under her breath. I have every right when you've dragged this family into scandal. Now be reasonable. Lena looked toward the guards. Their faces were blank, expressionless. Please, she said to them, voice cracking. You can see this isn't right. I'm pregnant. Neither moved. Their silence was worse than violence. Dahlia's patience snapped. Fine, she hissed. We'll do it ourselves. She reached for Lena's arm, but the moment her fingers brushed fabric, Lena flinched back, stumbling into the mirror. The bulb above them popped, showering sparks. The women gasped. Stop, Lena shouted. Her voice cracked through the silence. Don't touch me. But they didn't stop. Dahlia's cousin stepped forward, grabbing the shawl from Lena's shoulders with a single yank. The fabric fell away, leaving her in a thin silk dress that clung to her body and the visible curve of her belly. Her humiliation was complete. See? Dahlia sneered, her voice icy. Nothing to hide but attitude. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. You think this makes you powerful? She whispered. You're nothing but cowards. Behind the stacked linens, Grace trembled as she continued filming. Every second felt like a sin to watch, but a duty to record. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Dahlia turned toward one of the guards. Check her dress, she ordered. Even the guard hesitated. Ma'am, she's... Do it, Dahlia snapped. He stepped forward awkwardly, as if every fiber of him screamed against it. That hesitation saved everything. At that exact moment, the door creaked open. A maintenance worker poking his head in, startled by the raised voices. What's going on here? He asked. Nothing, Dahlia snapped, waving him off. Private family matter. The worker frowned. Ma'am, this is a public facility. You can't lock people. Before he could finish, one of the women slammed the door shut again. The echo of it rang like a gunshot. Lena's breathing turned ragged. She pressed both hands over her belly, trying to shield the child from the chaos. The baby kicked sharply, as if sensing her terror. You'll regret this, Lena said hoarsely. Every single one of you. Dahlia leaned close, her breath warm and poisonous, against Lena's ear. No, darling, you'll regret ever marrying into power you couldn't control. Then, a flash. Someone's phone had gone off, capturing the scene by accident. Dahlia turned sharply. Whose camera is that? But Grace was already gone, slipping out the service exit, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Inside, Vivienne's sisters-in-law muttered nervously. "This has gone too far," one whispered. "We should stop." "No," Dahlia said, straightening her gown. "We finish what we started. No one humiliates the Beaumonts and walks away clean." Lena looked up, her tears gone, replaced by something far stronger, fury. "You're right," she said quietly. "No one walks away clean." Outside, down the service corridor, Grace hit upload. The video file syncing to the cloud, its progress bar glowing red. And inside that room, the last bulb flickered out, plunging everything into darkness. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and ragged breathing. The mirror's last bulb fizzled out, leaving the backstage room drenched in shadow. Lena could hear the rustle of fabric, a stifled gasp, a heel scraping the floor. Someone cursed softly. Then, a sharp, hollow thud. When the lights flickered back, Dahlia was on the ground. Her head rested awkwardly against a trunk of spare linens, a dark smear staining the pale concrete beneath her. The other women screamed. One of them stumbled backward into the wall, knocking over a rack of gowns. "She's bleeding!" a voice shrieked. Lena froze, her breath shallow, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. For a second she didn't understand what she was seeing. Dahlia's hand twitched once, then went limp. "What did you do?" one of the women cried, pointing at Lena. I didn't touch her." Lena's voice cracked. She fell, she tripped. But no one was listening. One of the security guards was already on his radio. "We've got an incident. Medical team to the South Hall now." The chaos ignited instantly. The door burst open, letting in a blinding spill of hallway light and the thunder of footsteps. Waiters, guests, and staff crowded the corridor, drawn by the screams. The two socialites shouted over each other, insisting Lena had attacked Dahlia. Lena shook her head in disbelief. "No, she fell. Please, I didn't." But the sight was against her. Dahlia on the floor, blood trickling from her temple, and Lena standing over her with her hands stained crimson from the spilled makeup vial that had burst beside the trunk. "Step back," a man barked. It was hotel security. Two guards pulled Lena away as paramedics rushed in. "I didn't do anything," she pleaded, twisting in their grip. "I didn't touch her." Flashes exploded outside the door. Paparazzi, tipped off within minutes. Someone had leaked the story before she could even understand what had happened. Within 10 minutes, the once grand Beaumont Gala had turned into a crime scene. The orchestra stopped. Guests whispered. Vivienne Beaumont pushed through the crowd, face pale but eyes sharp as knives. "What have you done?" she hissed when she saw Lena restrained. "Nothing," Lena sobbed. "She slipped." Vivienne looked at Dahlia's still form being carried out on a stretcher. "You've destroyed this family," she said coldly. "You've humiliated us enough. I'll make sure the world knows what kind of woman you really are." Lucas appeared behind her, jaw clenched, refusing to meet Lena's eyes. "Just let them handle it," he muttered. "Lucas." "Please," she cried. "Tell them the truth." He said nothing. As the paramedics disappeared down the corridor, reporters shouted questions. Was there a fight? Did the pregnant wife attack her husband's assistant? Vivienne turned to the cameras, expression grave but measured. "It's a tragedy," she said. "My daughter-in-law has been under stress. We'll let the authorities decide what's true." That sentence sealed Lena's fate. Within minutes, she was escorted through the same golden doors she had entered hours earlier, the cameras flashing like lightning around her. The whispers followed her down the marble steps, unstable, violent, jealous. Inside her chest, panic clawed at her lungs. Every breath burned. And yet, somewhere far away in the service wing, Grace's phone vibrated with a single notification. "Upload complete." She stared at the thumbnail of the video. Dahlia's hand ripping Lena's shawl, Vivienne's laughter in the background, and the moment before the lights went out. Grace exhaled shakily. "Oh God," she whispered. "They have no idea what's coming." Back at the gala entrance, a journalist's voice rang out over the noise. "Mrs. Beaumont, is it true there's security footage of the attack?" Vivienne froze for a fraction of a second. And for the first time that night, the Queen of Boston society looked afraid. The flashing red and blue lights outside the Mariners Club painted the marble steps in chaos. Guests huddled near their cars, whispering as Lena was led out between two officers, her silk gown torn, her cheeks streaked with tears. The night air bit through her skin. Cameras followed every step, their bulbs bursting like gunfire. Mrs. Beaumont, did you attack your husband's employee? Is it true the victim might not survive? Were you jealous of your husband's relationship with Dahlia Pierce? Lena tried to speak, but her voice broke. I didn't hurt anyone. No one cared. The reporters wanted a villain, and Vivienne had already given them one. Across the steps, Vivienne stood beside Lucas, a hand dramatically pressed to her chest. We're cooperating fully, she told a camera crew, her tone pure grief. My daughter-in-law is unwell. We only want her to get help. The words hit Lena harder than the cold. Unwell. A single word, and every whisper would turn to judgment. Lucas didn't even look at her. He stared at the ground, his mother's shadow swallowing him whole. The officers guided Lena into the back of a black and white cruiser. The door slammed shut with a metallic finality that made her heart twist. Through the window, she saw Vivienne turn toward the cameras and dab fake tears from her eyes. Inside the car, Lena's body shook uncontrollably. Her hands, still stained from the broken vial of red makeup, looked like evidence. She pressed her palms against her knees to stop them from trembling. The baby shifted inside her belly, a small, desperate movement that nearly undid her. It's okay, she whispered. Mommy's here. Mommy's okay. The drive to the precinct blurred into streaks of city light. Every intersection, every flash of a phone camera, felt like another piece of her dignity being stripped away. When they arrived, a female officer escorted her into a side entrance, away from the reporters. Just procedure, the woman murmured. Try to breathe. Inside, the fluorescent light hummed coldly. A nurse checked her vitals, heart rate too high, blood pressure unstable. The officer hesitated, clearly torn between duty and pity. You're 7 months along, right? I'll see if we can move fast. Lena nodded numbly, unable to find words. Her mind replayed the scene over and over. Dahlia falling, the blood, Vivienne's look of satisfaction. None of it felt real, and yet the weight of it pressed down like stone. Hours passed before Lucas appeared. For a brief, foolish moment, hope flared in her chest. Maybe he'd come to tell the truth, but when the officer opened the door, he wouldn't meet her eyes. Lucas, she whispered, voice cracking. Please, tell them it was an accident. He swallowed hard. It's complicated, Lena. The press, the family's reputation. Her voice hardened. Our child's life is not complicated. He flinched but said nothing. Then quietly, Mother's lawyer says it's best if you cooperate. If you sign the statement, this will be easier. Lena stared at him in disbelief. You want me to confess to something I didn't do? Lucas didn't answer. He simply set a folder on the table and left. The moment he was gone, the nurse returned with a clipboard and a soft whisper. Someone just called for you. Said his name is Gregory Hartwell. Lena's heart stopped. Her father, the man she hadn't spoken to in years. He said, the nurse continued, to tell you, I've seen the footage. Sit tight. You won't spend the night there. Lena blinked, stunned. The footage? The nurse nodded slowly. He said the cameras didn't go dark everywhere. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, and somewhere across Boston, a powerful man was already gathering every lawyer, every ally, every weapon he had. Boston woke to headlines screaming her name. Pregnant socialite arrested after Gala brawl. Beaumont family in shock. Husband's assistant in critical condition. By morning, Lena's face was everywhere, on news sites, talk shows, even gossip podcasts. She sat in a small holding room at the precinct, still wearing her ruined gown, the thin blanket around her shoulders doing little against the sterile chill. Her mind pulsed with exhaustion and disbelief. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dahlia fall, saw Vivienne's cold satisfaction. A knock on the metal door startled her. A detective entered, followed by a tall, silver-haired man in a tailored navy coat. Lena's heart clenched. She hadn't seen that face in years. Strong jaw, steel gray eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room. Dad, she whispered. Gregory Hartwell didn't rush to hug her. He simply looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Get her a doctor, he said to the detective. His voice carried the kind of authority that didn't need volume. Already done, sir, the detective replied quickly. Obstetrics team's on standby. Gregory turned to Lena. Are you hurt? She shook her head, tears welling. No, but they're saying I know what they're saying, he interrupted, quiet but sharp. And it's going to stop today. The door opened again. 2 lawyers in suits entered, both from Hartwell and Associates, the powerhouse firm Gregory owned. One slid a thick folder onto the table. We've already secured a motion to release her on bail under medical supervision, he said. We've also subpoenaed the venue's surveillance archives. The detective blinked. That fast? Gregory gave a small, icy smile. I built the network that broadcasts your news, detective. I move faster than your paperwork. Lena's breath caught between gratitude and fear. Dad, why are you here now? You cut me off years ago. His jaw tightened. Because you chose to marry a Beaumont, and I don't rescue people who walk willingly into traps. But when I saw that footage, he paused, emotion flickering beneath his composed surface. I realized you didn't just marry the wrong man. You married into cruelty. Lena bit her lip, her voice trembling. The footage? What did you see? Gregory looked straight into her eyes. Enough to ruin them. He turned to his lawyers. Issue a press statement in 30 minutes. Announce that the Hartwell Group has obtained security footage showing coercion and assault against a pregnant woman. Don't mention her name yet. Make the world curious. The lawyer nodded and hurried out. Gregory faced the detective again. My team will handle her transfer to a private hospital. You'll have full cooperation from us, but if anyone leaks another image of my daughter, I'll sue the city into silence. Understood? The detective swallowed hard. Understood, Mr. Hartwell. Minutes later, Lena stepped out of the precinct under a canopy of flashing cameras, but this time, black SUVs blocked every lens. Her father's security surrounded her, forming a wall of silence. Inside the car, Gregory handed her a bottle of water. You're going to a clinic. The baby comes first. After that, we fight. Lena stared at him, voice small. They hate me, Dad. They'll destroy me. No, he said, his tone like iron. They've already destroyed themselves. They just don't know it yet. She looked out the window, watching reporters swarm uselessly behind the barricades. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of safety. Gregory glanced at his phone, reading a new message from his legal team. He smiled faintly. Security footage uploaded. Timestamp, 20 minutes before the blackout. Everything's on record. He looked at his daughter, eyes cold with purpose. Now, Lena, he said softly, let's remind them who they tried to humiliate. By noon, Boston wasn't talking about the gala anymore. It was talking about the footage. Every news outlet ran the same breaking banner. Hartwell Group possesses video evidence of assault on pregnant woman. In a private hospital suite overlooking the Charles River, Lena lay propped against white pillows, her hand resting on her belly as her father paced near the window. Reporters swarmed the gates outside. Lawyers, publicists, and investigators buzzed in and out like soldiers preparing for battle. Gregory stood motionless, his phone pressed to his ear. Release the edited version, he said quietly. Blur Lena's face, but keep everything else clear. I want the world to see what they did. Within minutes, the clip hit social media. The sound was low but unmistakable, the voice of Dahlia Pierce ordering Lena to take off the coat. The video showed Vivienne's relatives laughing, the guards blocking the door, and the moment Grace's camera shook in panic as Lena shouted, "Don't touch me." The internet erupted. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Justice for Lena, power and cruelty, Beaumont scandal. Comment sections filled with outrage. Even news anchors trembled as they described the footage, an act of humiliation inflicted on a pregnant woman by one of Boston's most revered families. In less than 2 hours, Vivienne's charity partners suspended all collaborations. Her phone exploded with calls from sponsors, lawyers, and reporters demanding answers. The board of the Beaumont Foundation convened an emergency meeting. Meanwhile, Gregory's lawyers filed not 1 but 3 lawsuits, criminal, civil, and corporate. The charges were clear: coercion, public endangerment, emotional abuse, and conspiracy to falsify evidence. The court accepted the filings immediately, granting an emergency order to secure every piece of surveillance from the Mariners Club. Gregory ended another call and looked toward his daughter. By tomorrow morning, he said, Vivienne Beaumont will be facing the district attorney. Lena swallowed hard. I didn't want this to turn into a war. Gregory turned, his eyes sharp. They made it a war the moment they touched you. I'm just finishing it. The door opened. Detective Rachel Lang entered, her badge clipped to her coat. She offered a small smile. I guess I'm your new friend in the storm. Lena blinked. Rachel? Rachel nodded. We went to school together, remember? I saw your name on the case file. I'm the lead investigator now. She pulled a tablet from her bag. We've already confirmed the original club footage. Turns out the main server was synced to an offsite backup, one Vivienne's team didn't know existed. Gregory's eyes gleamed. You have it? Rachel smirked. Every second, including the part right after the lights went out. Lena's breath caught. After the blackout? Rachel nodded. It shows Dahlia tripping on her own heel and hitting her head on a storage box. You never touched her. Gregory let out a slow, cold breath. Then this is over. Not quite, Rachel said. Dahlia's in the hospital, but she's conscious. She's already changed her story twice. My gut says she's scared. Good, Gregory said. She should be. Lena closed her eyes. The baby shifted gently beneath her hand, almost as if sensing the change. For the first time, she didn't feel powerless. Rachel leaned closer. We're scheduling interviews tomorrow morning. Vivienne, her staff, the guards, everyone. Once we go public, arrests will follow fast. Gregory checked his watch. Then let's make sure the whole city is watching. That evening, every major network cut into their regular programming. Gregory Hartwell appeared live on national television. Calm, composed, relentless, he spoke a single sentence that froze the country. My daughter was assaulted, humiliated, and lied about, but the truth has teeth, and it's about to bite. The broadcast ended. Phones rang across the city. And inside the Beaumont mansion, Vivienne's reflection cracked for the first time. Morning broke over Boston like a loaded gun. Outside the Beaumont estate, reporters formed a wall, cameras raised, voices sharp. Inside, Vivienne Beaumont sat at the head of a long oak table surrounded by lawyers and advisors who looked more like frightened hostages than professionals. Her pearl necklace trembled slightly against her throat as she slammed a newspaper onto the table. Beaumont matriarch accused of orchestrating assault on pregnant daughter-in-law. Vivienne's eyes burned with fury. They're destroying us, she hissed. He's destroying us. Across town in the glass tower of Hartwell Media, Gregory stood before a war room of screens. Every network, every social feed, every trending tag pulsed with his daughter's name. His empire, once dedicated to building narratives, was now tearing one down. Keep the heat on, he told his communications director. Every outlet, every commentator, they tried to strip my daughter's dignity. Now we strip their reputation. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Lena sat by the window, sunlight painting soft lines over her face. She could hear the city buzzing below. The horns, the protests, the flashes of camera light. Her phone buzzed nonstop, strangers sending love, survivors sharing their own stories. Rachel Lang arrived mid-morning, coffee in hand and determination in her stride. We've got confirmation, she said, setting down her tablet. The district attorney has issued formal subpoenas for Vivienne, Lucas, and Dahlia. They're to appear this afternoon. Lena blinked. That fast? Rachel smiled. Your father doesn't waste time, and neither do I. At that exact hour, chaos unfolded inside the Beaumont headquarters. Lucas Beaumont, pale and sleepless, was on a call with his CFO when his screen went black. Every account, every credit line tied to the Beaumont Foundation froze simultaneously. Gregory had made his second move. Overnight, Hartwell Capital had purchased the failing debt of the Beaumont conglomerate, quietly, legally, and completely. With one email, he'd become their largest creditor. Lucas burst into the living room where his mother sat, clutching a trembling glass of brandy. They froze our assets. We can't even make payroll. Vivienne looked up slowly. Hartwell, she whispered. He's not just fighting us in court. He's taking the ground under our feet. Lucas ran a hand through his hair. We need to talk to the press. Tell them he's manipulating the system. No, Vivienne snapped. The press is his system. Across town, Gregory's team gathered the final piece of their offensive. A live-streamed press conference scheduled for 4 p.m. Every major network had agreed to broadcast it. The title, Truth and Accountability, the Beaumont Case. At 3:45, Vivienne received the invitation in her inbox, sent directly from Gregory's office. Attached was a single sentence. Attend if you want to see how your lies die. By 4, the world watched as Gregory Hartwell stepped to the podium flanked by his attorneys and Detective Lang. Behind them, screens displayed still images from the security footage, blurred to protect Lena's identity, but clear enough to reveal every guilty face. Gregory's voice carried calm precision. These individuals conspired to publicly humiliate a pregnant woman. They manipulated media, falsified evidence, and attempted to destroy her name. What they didn't realize was that the world was watching. Clips rolled. Gasps filled the airwaves. The moment Dahlia demanded Lena disrobe, the laughter, the flash of Vivienne's diamond bracelet as she gestured to the guards. Reporters erupted. Questions flew. The city shook. Within minutes, the district attorney confirmed to the public that arrest warrants had been signed. Vivienne's phone buzzed on the table beside her untouched drink. She didn't have to look to know what it was. The law had arrived at her door. In the hospital, Lena watched the live stream, her heart pounding. Rachel smiled softly. It's happening. Justice, fast and loud. Gregory's closing words echoed through every broadcast, cutting deep and final. They stripped her of her dignity. We stripped them of their power. That's balance. Outside the Beaumont mansion, police sirens wailed. And inside, Vivienne Beaumont finally understood what it meant to lose control. Lucas Beaumont hadn't slept in 2 days. The city outside his penthouse pulsed with anger. Protests, flashing cameras, headlines screaming justice for Lena. His phone rang non-stop with calls he didn't answer. Lawyers, board members, journalists. Every ring felt like another stone being hurled at the glass walls around his life. He poured a drink at 9 in the morning, ignoring the fact that his hands were shaking. On the TV, Gregory Hartwell's press conference replayed again. Lucas turned up the volume just as Gregory's final words cut through the static. They stripped her of her dignity. We stripped them of their power. The glass in Lucas's hand cracked. He threw it against the wall, watching amber liquid run down the marble like blood. His mother burst into the room, disheveled, furious, clutching her phone. He's buying everything, Lucas. Every share, every debt, every property tied to our name. Hartwell is dismantling us one signature at a time. I know, he muttered, rubbing his temples. Then do something, Vivienne snapped. Fix this before it's too late. Lucas laughed bitterly. You still think I can fix anything? I can't even get into my own office. Security revoked my badge this morning. I'm CEO of nothing now. Vivienne froze. They fired you? He looked at her, hollow. No, Mother. They erased me. Outside, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up to the Beaumont corporate tower. Reporters swarmed as men in suits entered the building, holding sealed court documents. The board of directors, many of whom had invested with Hartwell Capital, had voted unanimously to remove Lucas Beaumont as acting CEO. By 10 a.m., the news hit every network. Lucas Beaumont ousted as CEO. Hartwell Group acquires controlling stake. Lena saw the report from her hospital bed. For a moment, she felt nothing. No victory, no triumph. Only the quiet ache of knowing that the man who once promised to protect her had stood by while others destroyed her. Rachel entered the room carrying a folder. Thought you'd want to see this, she said. Inside were still photos from the newly recovered footage. Lucas standing at the door during the assault, frozen in silence. Lena looked at the picture for a long time. He watched, she whispered. He saw everything. Rachel nodded and said nothing. That silence is his guilt. At the same time, Lucas stood before the Beaumont boardroom, facing a half-circle of executives who avoided his gaze. I can explain, he began. This scandal is your fault, one of them cut in. The investors are gone, the assets frozen, and now the police are circling your mother. You're toxic, Lucas. We can't afford you. Vivienne slammed her hand on the table. You cowards wouldn't exist without this family. Exactly, another replied coldly. That family is the problem. Security escorted them both out within minutes. Cameras caught every second. The once powerful Beaumont matriarch and her fallen heir pushed out of their own empire. The footage aired live, played side by side with clips of Lena's quiet composure at the hospital. Public opinion shifted completely. Sympathy for the Beaumonts evaporated. Admiration for Lena and Gregory soared. Back in the hospital, Gregory entered Lena's room carrying a laptop. Watch this, he said. On screen, Lucas stood outside a courthouse, reporters shouting questions. His face was pale, almost translucent. Lucas Beaumont, one shouted, do you have anything to say to your wife? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, the man who had built his life on image had nothing left to say. Gregory closed the laptop. That, he said quietly, is what truth does. It takes the voice of liars. Lena looked out the window at the glowing city below. Is it over? She asked softly. Gregory hesitated. Not yet. We've cut off their money. Now we cut their lies. He placed a folder on her lap. Court dates, witness lists, deposition plans. The next step, he said, is justice in front of the law. Outside, thunder rolled again over Boston. And somewhere across the city, Vivienne Beaumont picked up her phone and called someone she swore she'd never speak to again. Boston's skyline glittered under a gray morning, but the Beaumont Tower stood dark, its lights dead, its nameplate removed overnight. To the world, it was still a symbol of legacy and luxury. To Gregory Hartwell, it was a battlefield he had already won. In his downtown office, Gregory leaned over a polished walnut desk, signing a document as his legal team waited. "That's the last of it," one of them said. "All remaining Beaumont assets have transferred to Hartwell Holdings. Their liquidity is gone." Gregory set his pen down. "Good," he said. "Then let's make it public." By 9 a.m., the headline rolled across every major financial ticker. Hartwell Group acquires Beaumont debt portfolio, freezes operations pending investigation. Within minutes, panic spread through the Beaumont ranks. Creditors called, partnerships collapsed, employees flooded out of the building carrying boxes. At the same time, outside the courthouse, Vivienne Beaumont arrived for her subpoena hearing in oversized sunglasses and pearls that no longer glittered. Reporters crowded around her. "Mrs. Beaumont, is it true your company's been seized? Are you cooperating with police?" She ignored them, clutching Lucas's arm as they pushed through the chaos. But the moment they entered the marble lobby, federal investigators were waiting. "Mrs. Beaumont," said Agent Ramirez, holding a warrant, "we need you to surrender your phone and business records. There's evidence of tampering with surveillance systems at the Mariners Club." Vivienne's mask cracked for the first time. "This is absurd." Lucas stepped forward, voice trembling. "Agent, please, we'll comply." "No," Vivienne snapped. "You don't speak for me." The tension snapped like a wire. Cameras flashed. The queen of Boston society, once untouchable, was escorted through a metal detector while reporters shouted questions. Across town, Lena watched the live broadcast from her hospital bed. Rachel entered quietly, holding a tablet. "You should see this," she said. On the screen, bank statements scrolled by, showing millions funneled through fake charity accounts under Dahlia Pierce's management, each transaction signed off by Vivienne. Lena's breath hitched. "They used their foundation to hide money?" Rachel nodded. "And the DA just confirmed a full financial crimes investigation. Your father's move froze their accounts before they could transfer a dime." Gregory entered the room moments later, his expression grim but satisfied. "Vivienne tried to call 3 senators and 2 bankers this morning. They all refused to pick up." Lena exhaled shakily. "You're dismantling everything she built." Gregory sat beside her, his tone calm. "No, I'm showing her what it feels like to lose control. The law will do the rest." Meanwhile, in a dim office across the city, Dahlia Pierce sat alone, scrolling through news updates with trembling fingers. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. When she answered, Gregory's voice was steady, almost gentle. "Miss Pierce," he said, "you've been busy." She froze. "Mr. Hartwell, this isn't personal. I did what I was told." "I'm sure you did," he replied, "which is why I'm giving you a chance to tell the truth, on record today. Otherwise, I'll make sure every publication in America knows your name before sunset." The call ended. Dahlia looked at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. Mascara streaked, fear in her eyes. By afternoon, she appeared at the district attorney's office, flanked by 2 lawyers. "I'll testify," she whispered. "But I want protection." The DA nodded. "You'll have it." That same evening, Gregory held another press conference. This time, he wasn't alone. Detective Rachel Lang stood beside him. "We've received full cooperation from an inside witness," she announced. "Arrest warrants have been approved for multiple parties, including members of the Beaumont board." The cameras flashed. Vivienne's phone rang inside the courthouse hallway, but it wasn't a lawyer. It was her assistant whispering, "They've arrested Dahlia. She's naming names." Vivienne went still. For the first time in her life, she had no strategy, no defense, no audience. In the hospital, Lena turned off the TV and closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, her heart slowed. Justice was no longer coming. It had arrived, and it was wearing her father's name. By the end of the week, Boston was split into 2 camps: those who believed Lena Hartwell was a survivor of cruelty, and those who believed she was part of a grand performance orchestrated by her billionaire father. Every screen in the city glowed with her image. Every talk show speculated about justice, revenge, and power. In the command center of Hartwell Media, Gregory stood before a dozen monitors, displaying news feeds from around the world. "We control the truth now," one of his editors said. But the Beaumonts are trying to spin a counter-story. Their PR team claims the video was edited. Gregory's jaw tightened. "Then let's show them everything." He pressed a button on the control pad. The central screen lit up with unreleased footage, raw, uncut, time-stamped. It showed Dahlia's cruel smirk, Vivienne's taunting command, Lucas standing frozen by the door. And then the unthinkable. Audio of Vivienne ordering, "Make sure the cameras stop recording." Gregory turned to his staff. "Upload this to every outlet we own. No filters, no spin." Across the city, millions watched in stunned silence as the truth played out unedited. The narrative shifted instantly. The Beaumonts weren't victims, they were villains. At the district attorney's office, Dahlia Pierce sat trembling in a gray interrogation room, her designer jacket hanging loosely on her shoulders. Detective Rachel Lang set down a recorder. "You said you were following orders," she said evenly. "Whose orders?" Dahlia's eyes darted to the mirrored wall. "Vivienne's," she whispered. "She said we needed to teach Lena a lesson, make her understand who holds the power in that family. She even told the guards what to say if anyone asked." Rachel leaned forward. "And Lucas?" Dahlia hesitated. "He knew. He didn't stop it because he was scared of her, of his mother. He's always been scared." Rachel clicked off the recorder. "That's all we needed." By afternoon, the DA's office filed additional charges: witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and accessory to assault. Arrest warrants for 2 Beaumont security officers followed within the hour. The city had never seen such a rapid unraveling of an empire. At the Beaumont mansion, chaos reigned. Reporters camped at the gates while legal teams packed documents into boxes. Vivienne watched the news from her private sitting room, the muted screen showing her own face as anchors recited her alleged crimes. "This is slander," she hissed. "I built this city's charity network." Lucas stood behind her, pale and shaking. "They have everything, Mother. Dahlia's turned on us, the guards confessed, and the footage." "Stop talking," Vivienne shouted. "You think your father's ghost would let this happen? You think I'll be dragged through the mud like some criminal?" Lucas didn't answer. For the first time, he saw the woman behind the pearls in perfection, small, desperate, terrified. At Hartwell headquarters, Gregory received a call from Rachel. "The Beaumont staff is cooperating," she reported. "We've recovered their private server. There are emails proving Vivienne paid off reporters to smear your daughter." Gregory's voice turned ice cold. "Send copies to every federal agency. Let her drown in her own lies." Meanwhile, Lena watched the live news feed from her hospital bed. For the first time, she saw everything. Every sneer, every cruel word, every moment they tried to break her. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was vindication. She whispered to herself, "You can't erase the truth." Rachel entered the room minutes later. "They're done, Lena. The DA wants to schedule court dates immediately. This will go public." Lena nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Good. Let the world see exactly how power collapses when it's built on cruelty." Outside, storm clouds rolled in, thunder rumbling like applause. In the Beaumont mansion, Vivienne turned from the darkened TV, whispering to herself, "He can't win forever." But she didn't know. Gregory wasn't just winning. He was rewriting the rules of power, one revelation at a time. By the time the courthouse doors opened, the crowd outside stretched for blocks. Reporters lined the steps, their microphones angled toward the marble entrance like weapons. The trial of Lena Hartwell versus the Beaumont family had become the event of the decade, part courtroom drama, part morality play. Inside, cameras had been granted limited access by special order of the judge. The world would witness every word, every tear, every truth. Lena stood at the defense table, a pale blue maternity dress replacing the couture gowns she used to wear at Beaumont events. Her belly was round now, full and visible, a symbol of both fragility and defiance. Beside her, Gregory adjusted his tie, calm but razor-sharp. Across the aisle, Vivienne Beaumont sat like a statue carved from ice, her pearls replaced by a court-issued bracelet tracker. The judge entered. Court is now in session. The first witness, Detective Rachel Lang. Her testimony was concise, methodical, devastating. The footage recovered from the Mariners Club shows the defendants, Vivienne Beaumont, Dahlia Pierce, and Lucas Beaumont, engaging in an act of coercion, physical intimidation, and psychological abuse toward Mrs. Lena Hartwell. The victim was 7 months pregnant at the time. Gas rippled through the courtroom. Cameras flashed. Vivian's lawyer objected, claiming bias. Overruled. Next came Grace, the quiet catering assistant who had filmed the entire assault. Her hands trembled as she took the stand. "I didn't know what to do," she said softly. "But I knew it was wrong." They laughed while she cried. "I thought, if that were me, someone would want proof." When the prosecution played Grace's footage in full, the courtroom fell silent. On screen, Vivian's voice echoed, "Take off the coat. We can't have stains in our family." Then came Lena's voice, desperate and shaking. "I said no." The clip ended. No one moved. The sound of muffled crying came from the gallery. Vivian broke first. "This is being twisted," she snapped. "That video doesn't show what really happened. It was chaos, an accident." Gregory rose slowly, his tone cold and steady. "An accident? You orchestrated it. You ordered the lights cut. You hired guards to block the door. Do you want me to play the recording of your phone call from that night?" The courtroom erupted. Vivian's face drained of color. "Order!" The judge demanded, banging the gavel. "Order in this court." Gregory continued, unflinching. "We subpoenaed your personal assistant. She confirmed you said, and I quote, 'Make sure the cameras stop recording before we teach her a lesson.'" Vivian stared at him in horror. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I already did," Gregory replied. Outside, news networks broke the story live. Explosive evidence revealed at Beaumont trial. Social media exploded in outrage. The hashtag Justice for Lena hit 100 million posts in under an hour. When Lucas took the stand, the tension was unbearable. His voice shook. "I didn't want this," he said. "But my mother, she said if I defended Lena, she'd disown me." Gregory's lawyer stepped forward. "And did you defend your wife?" Lucas looked down. "No." The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian turned toward him, disbelief twisting her face. "You coward," she hissed. "You betrayed your own mother." The judge pounded the gavel again. "Mrs. Beaumont, one more outburst and you'll be removed." Lena sat motionless, her hands resting over her stomach. For the first time, she wasn't the one trembling. The prosecution rested. The defense tried to recover, but it was too late. Every lie, every cruelty, every act of arrogance had been stripped bare. As court adjourned for the day, reporters rushed to capture the moment. Lena stepped outside with Gregory and Rachel at her side. The flash of cameras blinded her, but this time, she didn't flinch. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Hartwell, what do you hope comes from all this?" Lena smiled faintly. "Truth," she said, "the kind that doesn't need to be edited." Behind her, the courthouse doors slammed shut, echoing through the city. And for the first time, the world stopped seeing her as the victim. She had become the storm. The verdict wasn't in yet, but the world had already made up its mind. Overnight, Vivian Beaumont went from Boston's queen of philanthropy to its most despised socialite. The city that once bowed to her name now crossed the street to avoid it. Every major sponsor pulled out of the Beaumont Foundation. Luxury brands revoked their partnerships. Anonymous emails leaked internal memos detailing years of misuse of charity funds. What had started as a family scandal had become a corporate implosion. In her penthouse suite, Vivian sat surrounded by stacks of unopened letters and legal notices. Her reflection in the glass wall looked older, smaller. The pearls that once symbolized power now hung around her neck like a chain. "Mother, we have to leave the city," Lucas said quietly, pacing behind her. "Hartwell owns everything. Our lawyers, our debts, our story. We can't win this." Vivian didn't turn. "You think I'll run? Let that man and his bastard daughter ruin everything I built?" Lucas stopped pacing. "What's left to ruin?" Vivian spun toward him, eyes blazing. "Your father's name, my reputation. This family was built on control, discipline. That girl destroyed it all with one video." "No," Lucas snapped, his voice shaking. "You destroyed it. You humiliated a pregnant woman on camera and turned your own son into a coward." The room went silent. For the first time in his life, Lucas saw fear in his mother's eyes. Meanwhile, across town, Gregory Hartwell watched the live stock reports. Beaumont Industries shares had fallen 76% in 2 days. The board had issued an emergency vote to dissolve the company. Effective immediately, the news anchor said, the Beaumont name is being removed from all corporate assets. Lena watched beside him, her hand resting protectively over her belly. "They're losing everything," she said softly. Gregory looked at her, unreadable. "You think that's justice?" "I think it's balance," she replied. But balance was a fragile thing. Outside, angry protesters surrounded the Beaumont estate. Banners waved, "Justice for Lena," and the elite. Social media lit up with clips of Vivienne's trial, each more damning than the last. Inside, Vivienne tried to call old allies, senators, investors, charity directors, but every number went straight to voicemail. Even her lawyer refused to answer. By evening, federal agents arrived at her doorstep with a warrant. The moment was captured by dozens of cameras. Vivienne Beaumont, once draped in couture, now stood in a gray coat as an agent read her rights. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but disbelief. "I gave this city everything," she whispered, "and this is how it repays me?" Lucas stood beside her, eyes wet. "We did this, Mother. We earned it." The agents led her away as flashes painted the night. Back at the hospital, Rachel entered Lena's room, holding a folder. "The DA wants to fast-track sentencing. With the financial crimes added, Vivienne could face 20 years. Dahlia gets 5 with cooperation. Lucas, maybe probation if he keeps helping." Lena nodded slowly. "I don't hate them," she said, "but I'll never forget what they did." Gregory looked at his daughter for a long moment. "You don't have to hate them," he said. "They've built their own prison." That night, as the news looped footage of Vivienne being taken into custody, Gregory turned off the TV. The world finally knew the truth, but victory felt hollow. Lena stirred in her sleep, one hand over her unborn child. Gregory sat in the dark beside her, eyes distant. For the first time, he wondered whether revenge was ever enough. Outside, thunder rolled over the city again, a sound like the closing of a final curtain. At dawn, the Beaumont crest was removed from its last remaining building. And with it, a dynasty crumbled, one act of cruelty at a time. The storm finally broke the night Lena went into labor. Rain hammered the hospital windows as thunder rolled over the Charles River. The world outside buzzed with headlines and breaking news, but inside that quiet delivery room, everything narrowed to one fragile heartbeat and one exhausted woman holding on through pain. Gregory stood in the hallway, pacing in silence. For all his power and wealth, he had never felt more helpless. The monitors beeped steadily behind the closed doors, each sound slicing through his composure. Rachel Lang approached, her shoes squeaking against the polished floor. "She's strong," she said softly. "So is the baby. The doctor said she's doing fine." Gregory exhaled, shoulders slumping. "I've fought corporations, governments, and scandals," he murmured, "but nothing terrifies me like watching her fight for that child." Hours crawled by until the doctor stepped out, mask lowered, eyes soft with relief. "She did it," he said. "A healthy baby boy, 7 pounds, 1 ounce." Gregory's throat tightened. Can I see them?" He entered the dim room quietly. Lena lay propped against the pillows, her hair damp, her eyes half closed but glowing with something fierce and peaceful. In her arms wrapped in white, the baby stirred. "He has your mother's eyes," Gregory whispered. Lena smiled faintly. "And your stubbornness." For a long moment, father and daughter said nothing. Outside, the rain softened into mist. The chaos of the world faded to silence. Then Lena's gaze darkened. "What happens now, Dad? The trial's ending, the Beaumonts are ruined, but it doesn't feel like peace." Gregory pulled a chair beside her. "Because justice and peace aren't the same thing," he said quietly. "Justice is loud. Peace takes time." She traced the baby's tiny fingers. "I don't want him to grow up in hate." "You won't let him," Gregory said. "That's why I know he'll be fine." Later that evening, the hospital lights dimmed, and Rachel returned with news. The judge issued sentencing. Vivienne got 15 years for coercion and obstruction. Dahlia, 5 years mandatory community service. Lucas pled guilty to negligence and conspiracy, 2 years of probation, no inheritance rights. Lena stared at the ceiling, absorbing the words. "So it's really over?" Rachel nodded. "Officially, yes. But people will talk for years. This trial changed everything, how the media treats victims, how society sees power." Gregory looked at his daughter, pride and sadness mingling in his eyes. "You did that," he said. "Not me. You faced them and didn't break." Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. "I almost did." "But you didn't," he replied. She turned toward him, her eyes shimmering. "I used to think revenge would heal me," she said. "Now I just want to build something better, something that helps women like me. Gregory smiled faintly. Then let's make that happen. I'll fund whatever you need. No, she said softly, shaking her head. Not your empire's money. I want to start with something clean, something mine. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough, but whatever you build, I'll be there to protect it. He stood and looked down at the baby, now sleeping peacefully. What will you name him? Lena smiled, her eyes distant but calm. Ely, she said. It means, my God ascends. Gregory's throat caught. It suits him. As he left the room, he paused at the window. Reporters waited outside, flashes of light cutting through the rain, still hungry for the next headline. But for once, Gregory didn't care about the noise, the power, or the war he had won. In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the slow breathing of a newborn, he saw something money could never buy. For the first time in years, Gregory Hartwell believed in redemption. The courthouse was quieter this time, but the weight in the air was heavier than ever. Reporters filled every seat, pens poised, cameras ready. The world had been waiting for this moment, the final sentencing in the case that had shaken Boston's elite to its core. Lena sat in the first row beside her father, her baby now 3 weeks old and safe at home with a nurse. She wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. She wasn't here as a symbol anymore, she was here as a woman demanding closure. The judge entered, stern and composed. We are here to deliver sentencing for the defendants in the Commonwealth versus Beaumont et al. Vivienne Beaumont sat at the defense table, her once perfect posture now slightly slumped. Lucas sat beside her, eyes downcast, pale as paper. Dahlia Pierce fidgeted behind them, her hands shaking. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The judge began reading the charges, each word cutting deeper than any blade. Vivienne Beaumont is found guilty of coercion, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit assault. She is sentenced to 15 years in state custody, with no possibility of early release. Gasps rippled through the room. Vivienne's face twisted, disbelief flickering into fury. You can't, she shouted, standing. This is political. She pointed at Gregory, he's orchestrated all of this. Order, the judge barked, slamming the gavel. One more outburst and I will have you removed. Vivienne's words choked in her throat. She sat down slowly, trembling. For the first time, there was no one left to listen to her voice. The judge turned to Dahlia. For her role in fabricating evidence and aiding the assault, Miss Pierce will serve 5 years in prison, followed by community service and mandatory therapy. Dahlia nodded weakly, tears sliding down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered toward Lena. I really am. Lena met her eyes for the briefest second. Then prove it, she said softly. Finally, the judge looked at Lucas. The room fell silent. Mr. Beaumont, though not directly involved in physical acts, your failure to intervene, your silence, and your attempt to conceal evidence make you complicit in these crimes. The court sentences you to 2 years probation, community service, and the full forfeiture of your family inheritance. Lucas looked up, his voice barely audible. I understand. Do you? Gregory muttered under his breath, his eyes fixed on the man who had once promised to protect his daughter. The judge banged the gavel once more. This court is adjourned. Outside, the news exploded within minutes. Beaumont family sentenced. Justice for Lena Hartwell. Crowds cheered outside the courthouse as the police led Vivienne away in handcuffs. For the first time, the once untouchable matriarch faced the world without her pearls, without her power, without her mask. Lena and Gregory exited through the side door, avoiding the media frenzy. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady, as they reached the waiting car. You got what you wanted, Gregory said quietly. Justice. Lena looked up at the gray sky. No, she said. Justice belongs to the law. I just wanted peace. He studied her face, the calm, the resolve, the quiet strength that reminded him so much of her mother. You've changed, he said. She smiled faintly. You did too. As they drove away, the city lights flickered against the wet streets. Inside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the empty benches, replaying the moment the Beaumont empire fell. On every television in Boston, the same image appeared, Vivienne being escorted to a prison van, her head bowed. Back in her hospital room, Lena returned to her baby that night. She held him close, his tiny heartbeat steady against hers. It's over, she whispered. No more fear. Outside the window, the rain finally stopped. In the courthouse archive, the final words of the judge echoed through the speakers as the news replayed. The law does not serve the powerful, it serves the truth. Lena smiled softly, rocking her child. And for the first time the truth had finally won. Spring came early that year, soft and golden, washing the city of Boston in a warmth it hadn't felt in months. The trial had ended. The cameras had moved on, and the Beaumont name had disappeared from headlines. But in a quiet brick building overlooking the harbor, something new was being born. The sign outside read, "Shield Her Foundation, a refuge for women facing abuse, coercion, or humiliation." Inside, the atmosphere was nothing like the cold offices Gregory Hartwell once ruled. Light poured through tall windows. Walls were painted pale cream. Photos of smiling mothers and children lined the hallway. It smelled of lavender and coffee. At the center of it all stood Lena Hartwell, wearing a soft beige blouse and a gold pin shaped like a feather. Her son, Eli, slept in a carrier on her chest as she reviewed paperwork with Rachel Lang and Grace, the quiet catering worker who had once saved her by pressing record. Grace looked around the bustling office, eyes wide. "It's hard to believe this all started in that awful ballroom," she said. Lena smiled gently. "That night took everything from me, but it also gave me purpose." Rachel chuckled. "You sound like your father." At the mention of Gregory, Lena's smile softened. He'd helped quietly from the shadows, donating funds under another name, refusing public credit. He didn't want to own her story. He just wanted to protect it. Across town, reporters gathered at the new foundation's official launch. This time, the microphones and flashing lights didn't make Lena flinch. They weren't there to corner her. They were there to listen. As the event began, she stepped up to the podium. The crowd fell silent. "2 years ago," she began, "I stood in a room where I was stripped of dignity, voice, and safety. I thought that moment would define me forever. But pain isn't the end of a story, it's the beginning of one." Her voice steadied as she continued. "This foundation isn't about revenge, it's about protection. No woman, pregnant, younger, or powerless, should face the humiliation I did and feel alone." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but this time the light felt warm. Among the guests stood Gregory, watching quietly from the back of the room. He didn't move forward when the applause swelled. He simply smiled. Beside him, Rachel whispered, "You must be proud." Gregory nodded slightly. Her mother would have been. Later, when the speeches ended, Lena found him near the exit. "You didn't have to hide in the back," she said with a grin. "I'm not the story," he replied. "You are." "You were part of it," she reminded him. He hesitated, then smiled. "Maybe. But you turned it into something I never could, hope." They walked together through the hall filled with volunteers, students, lawyers, doctors, everyone who believed in her mission. Grace was showing new staff how to process donations, her laughter light and free. Outside, a group of women gathered near the steps, clutching information packets, some still bearing bruises, others carrying children. One of them whispered as Lena passed, "You're the reason I came forward." Lena paused, heart full. "No," she said softly, "you're the reason this exists." When the crowd began to disperse, she looked back at the foundation's gleaming glass doors. The reflection staring back wasn't the broken woman from that gala. It was someone rebuilt. Gregory touched her shoulder. "You did it," he said. She looked toward the horizon where the city lights flickered like stars. "No," she murmured. "We did it. Every woman who ever thought she had to stay silent, we spoke for them." A soft breeze lifted her hair as church bells rang in the distance. Boston was healing, just like she was. And for the first time, her story wasn't about survival. It was about strength. The Shield Her Foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, they had opened satellite offices in New York and Chicago. Donations poured in. Politicians quoted Lena's speeches. Survivors wrote letters that filled entire walls with gratitude. For the public, it was a story of redemption. But for Lena, it was also a quiet reminder. Peace never comes without echoes. One rainy afternoon, while sorting mail in her office, Lena found a thick, unmarked envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The elegant cursive stopped her breath. "Vivian Beaumont." She hesitated before reading. "They tell me writing can help the soul. I doubt that, but the silence in this cell is loud enough to crush me, so I'll try. You think I'm a monster, and maybe you're right. I justified everything, control, cruelty, power, because I thought that's what survival meant. I forgot that fear isn't strength. I see that now, too late. I've watched interviews of your foundation on the prison TV. You built something out of what we destroyed. That should make me hate you, but it doesn't. It terrifies me, because for the first time I realize what real power looks like. Tell your son his grandmother's sorry. Vivienne. Lena stared at the signature for a long time. The ink was smudged, but the emotion was unmistakable. She didn't know what she felt: pity, anger, or relief. When Gregory entered a few minutes later, he found her sitting silently by the window, the letter folded in her lap. "What's that?" he asked. "From her," she said softly. He frowned. "Vivienne?" Lena nodded. "She says she's sorry." Gregory's face hardened. Regret is just another form of control for people like her. Don't let it in. "I'm not," Lena said quietly, "but maybe she means it." He sighed. "You've always seen too much good in people." Lena smiled faintly. "And you've seen too little." They sat in silence as rain streaked down the windows. Outside, the harbor waves hit the rocks like a heartbeat. Later that week, Rachel dropped by with updates. "Vivienne's letter's not the only news," she said. "Lucas petitioned to volunteer at a local community program for ex-offenders. The court approved it." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You think he's changing?" Rachel shrugged. "Maybe guilt finally works better than fear." That night, after putting Eli to sleep, Lena stood by his crib, tracing his tiny fingers. "You'll never grow up afraid," she whispered. "Not of family, not of truth." Her phone buzzed. It was Grace calling from the New York branch. "We just took in a woman with a story almost identical to yours," Grace said. "Her in-laws tried to destroy her reputation online. She saw your documentary and came to us." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "Then it's working," she said. Every scar became a doorway. After hanging up, she turned off the nursery light and walked onto the balcony. Boston glowed below, skyscrapers reflected in the river, the same city that once broke her. But now it looked different. Not threatening, not cold, just alive. A gentle knock sounded on the door. Gregory stepped out, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Too many thoughts," Lena admitted. He handed her the cup. "You've done more than anyone could have expected. But make sure you still live, not just fight." She looked at him. "That's what I'm learning now." He smiled, his expression soft for the first time in years. "Good, because Eli deserves a mother who's free, not just famous." They stood together in silence, watching lightning flicker over the bay. Somewhere inside, the ghosts of the past finally began to fade, not forgotten, but forgiven. Lena took a deep breath and whispered to the night, "It's over." But deep down she knew the truth. Some stories don't end. They evolve. 2 years after the trial, Lena Hartwell was no longer just a survivor. She had become a symbol. Her foundation, Shield Her, had expanded internationally, and her face appeared on magazine covers under headlines like "The Woman Who Changed Justice" and "From Humiliation to Hope." Still, she avoided interviews. The cameras reminded her too much of the night that nearly broke her. But when the Atlantic Journal requested an in-depth piece about the foundation's impact, Lena agreed, not for fame, but to tell the story in her own words, one last time. The interview took place in the foundation's Boston headquarters. The studio was bright and minimalistic, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The interviewer, a calm woman named Dana Fields, set her recorder on the table. "Thank you for meeting me, Lena," Dana said. "The world knows your story, but not the person behind it. I'd like to change that." Lena smiled politely. "The world doesn't need more of my story. It needs more of what comes after it." Dana leaned forward. "Then tell me, what comes after surviving?" Lena thought for a long moment before answering. "Living, but living differently. I used to think strength meant silence, enduring quietly. Now I know real strength is using your pain to build something that protects others." Dana nodded. "You've helped over 5,000 women through Shield Her. That's remarkable, but do you ever feel the past still following you?" Lena hesitated. "Yes," she admitted. "There are nights when I still wake up hearing their laughter, Vivienne's voice, the whispers, the humiliation. But trauma doesn't disappear, it transforms. You learn to live beside it instead of under it." She paused, then smiled faintly. "Besides, I have a little boy who makes sure I stay in the present. Eli's my reminder that life didn't end that night. It began there." Dana softened. "How is he?" "Curious, stubborn, kind," Lena said, laughing quietly. He's Gregory's twin in every way, except his eyes. Those are mine. Speaking of your father, Dana said carefully, there are people who say Gregory Hartwell used your case to consolidate power, that he gained more from this than justice. Lena's expression didn't change. He did gain power, she said simply, but not the kind you can measure in money. My father learned compassion, maybe for the first time in his life. That's his real victory. Dana blinked, caught off guard by the grace in Lena's tone. Do you forgive him? For cutting you off all those years before the scandal? Lena looked out the window, the harbor glinting below. Forgiveness isn't a gift for them, she said softly. It's freedom for me. I forgave him the day he showed up at that precinct, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to stop bleeding. A quiet filled the room. Dana switched off the recorder. You know, you could easily have turned bitter, but you didn't. Why? Lena smiled gently. Because bitterness is just another prison, and I've already escaped one. The interview ended, but Dana lingered by the door. Thank you for letting the world see who you really are, she said. As she left, Gregory appeared, holding a folder. You handled that well, he said. I told the truth, Lena replied. That's all I ever needed to do. Gregory looked at her proudly. They'll call it a redemption story. She shook her head. It's not redemption. It's evolution. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the harbor gold. Eli's laughter echoed from the playroom down the hall. Lena turned toward the sound, her eyes soft. That's the real headline, she murmured. That laughter, it means I won. And for the first time, her story wasn't about what had been taken, but about what she had built from the ashes. Exactly 3 years after the scandal that had nearly destroyed her life, Lena Hartwell stood before a mirror in a soft ivory gown, her reflection glowing beneath the chandelier. Tonight wasn't about pain. It was about victory. Shield Her Foundation was hosting its first ever charity gala at the same venue where everything had once gone wrong, the Mariners Club. The irony wasn't lost on her. The ballroom that once echoed with laughter and cruelty would now witness grace and strength. Grace, the woman who had filmed that night, approached from behind, fastening a silver pin shaped like a feather to Lena's dress. Are you sure about this place? She asked quietly. You could have picked anywhere else in the city. Lena smiled. That's why I picked it. I won't let memories own me anymore. Guests began arriving. Leaders, celebrities, survivors, journalists. The red carpet shimmered, but the tone of the night was reverent, not glamorous. On every table sat a small card. Dignity has no price. Every woman deserves safety. Gregory Hartwell watched his daughter from across the room. He no longer looked like the corporate giant who once ruled the media. His hair had gone grayer, his shoulders softer. But when he saw Lena laugh with guests, his eyes lit with something no empire could buy: peace. When the orchestra began to play, Lena walked to the podium, the same spot where, years ago, Vivienne Beaumont had mocked her in front of the world. Now the crowd rose to its feet, applause thunderous. 3 years ago, Lena began, I stood in this room feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. I was pregnant, frightened, and humiliated. I thought my story would end here, but instead, this was where it began. The room fell silent. She continued, voice steady. Every woman here knows what it means to be silenced. Tonight, we break that silence, not with anger, but with purpose. Because what they meant for shame became our foundation. Applause swelled again. Cameras flashed, but this time the light didn't burn. It illuminated. Gregory joined her on stage, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. I used to think power meant control, he said. But my daughter taught me that true power is protection. She rebuilt what others tried to destroy, and tonight we honor that strength, not just hers, but every woman's. The crowd rose once more, clapping, some in tears. Later, as the night unfolded, donors pledged millions. Survivors shared their stories on stage. Rachel Lang, now the Foundation's Director of Legal Advocacy, announced the launch of a nationwide hotline. Grace presented a new program for pregnant women facing abuse, aptly named the Ava Project, in honor of Lena's middle name. But the most powerful moment came when a small group of women entered the room quietly, former employees of the Beaumont estate. They had come on their own, dressed simply, faces solemn. The crowd parted as they approached Lena. One of them, an older maid, spoke softly. We worked for her, for Vivienne. We saw what she did to you. We stayed silent then. We're sorry. Lena's eyes glistened. She reached out and took the woman's hand. "You don't owe me forgiveness," she said gently. "You owe it to yourselves. You're free now. Don't let the past chain you." A hush fell. Cameras captured the moment, but it didn't feel like publicity. It felt like healing. When the night ended, Lena stepped onto the balcony overlooking the harbor. The same skyline that had once mocked her now shimmered like a promise. Gregory joined her, a glass of champagne in hand. "You changed the story," he said. She smiled, watching the waves. "No, Dad, I just finished the chapter." Behind them, the orchestra began to play again, soft, elegant, full of light. And for the first time, the Mariners Club wasn't a scene of humiliation. It was a monument to rebirth. The morning after the gala, sunlight spilled over the Boston harbor, golden and quiet. The city seemed to breathe differently now, softer somehow, as if the ghosts of its scandals had finally been laid to rest. Lena Hartwell woke early, the sound of seagulls drifting through the window of her townhouse. For the first time in years, she felt rested. No nightmares, no flashbacks, just peace. Eli's laughter echoed down the hall. She followed it into the kitchen, where Gregory sat at the counter reading the morning paper, while Eli spooned cereal onto the table instead of into his mouth. "You're teaching him bad habits," Lena teased. Gregory glanced up over the newspaper, his expression soft. "He's teaching me patience. Seems fair." She laughed and kissed Eli's head before pouring coffee. "You're not supposed to be up this early, Dad." He folded the paper, revealing a headline that made her pause. "The Mariners Club Gala raises $40 million for women's protection initiatives." Beneath it was a photo of her at the podium, strong, calm, radiant. The caption read, "The woman who turned humiliation into hope." Gregory handed it to her. "You did that." She shook her head. "We did that." After breakfast, she took Eli to the waterfront park near the foundation's office. The spring air was crisp, the world blooming again. People recognized her, waved politely, but no one intruded. She was no longer a headline, they saw her as a person. As Eli toddled toward the fountain, a woman approached hesitantly. She looked nervous, holding a folded newspaper. "Mrs. Hartwell?" Lena smiled kindly. "Just Lena, please." The woman's voice trembled. I was in a situation like yours. Not the same, but my boss threatened me after I spoke up. Your story, your foundation saved me. I just wanted to say thank you." Lena reached out, touching the woman's hand. "You saved yourself," she said gently. "We just gave you a place to land." The woman nodded, eyes shining. "You gave me courage." When she left, Lena turned back to see Gregory watching from a bench. He had that quiet look of pride again, the same one he wore the day she launched Shield Her. Later that afternoon, they visited the foundation together. The lobby buzzed with life. Volunteers packing care boxes, lawyers reviewing case files, survivors laughing over coffee. On the wall behind the reception desk, a mural depicted a phoenix rising from flames, its wings spreading across the ceiling. Grace walked up, carrying a file. "You have a call from the governor's office," she said. "They're proposing a partnership. Statewide funding for victim protection programs." Lena blinked. "That's huge." Grace grinned. "I told you we were just getting started." As she walked toward her office, she passed the framed letter from Vivienne Beaumont. Its ink now faded, but its message eternal. She had chosen to keep it there as a reminder that pain can be transformed, even when forgiveness seems impossible. Her office window overlooked the harbor. The same skyline that once symbolized everything she lost. Now it symbolized everything she rebuilt. Gregory joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked. She smiled softly. "I used to think the story ended with revenge. Then I thought it ended with justice. But now, I think it never really ends. It just changes direction." He chuckled. "You sound like a philosopher." "Maybe motherhood does that," she said. "You start seeing life as chapters instead of battles." They stood together in the sunlight, watching the water shimmer. A knock came on the door. Rachel stepped in, holding an envelope. "From the governor," she said. "And Lena, congratulations." Lena opened it. Inside was a proclamation, signed and sealed. April 12th, Shield Her Day, State of Massachusetts. For a moment, Lena couldn't speak. Tears welled in her eyes. Gregory rested a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother would have been proud," he said quietly. Lena looked out at the harbor, the light reflecting like silver across the waves. "I think she is," she whispered. Eli's laughter echoed from the hallway. The world outside was brighter, alive. And as the sun rose over Boston, Lena Hartwell finally understood her story hadn't been about revenge at all. It was about legacy. So, that's how the story ends. My dear friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me until this moment, then something in Lena's journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you that pain doesn't have to define us, it can refine us. The Stoics used to say, what stands in the way becomes the way. Lena's suffering became the very path that led her to strength, compassion, and purpose. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's the truth of healing. It isn't about revenge or forgetting. It's about reclaiming peace within yourself. So if life has ever stripped you of your dignity or your voice, remember this story. Remember that even the darkest night can give birth to a brighter dawn. If this journey made you feel something, hope, courage, or even just a little more faith in humanity, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to our channel. Because somewhere out there, another woman is waiting to be reminded that she too can rise again. And maybe, together, we can help her believe it. Sometimes, the fall doesn't begin with the impact. It begins the moment we believe we're untouchable. A wealthy tech magnate slapped his pregnant wife in public in front of his mistress, but he didn't know he was being watched. The golden lion of modern Chicago society, Nicholas Dayton, a self-made millionaire with tailored suits, a penthouse in Lincoln Park, and a pregnant wife adored by many. Yet behind the glossy magazine covers and lavish charity appearances, something darker lurked. Whispers spoke of another woman, a mistress whose presence threatened to fracture the storybook marriage. No one could have predicted the fiery public confrontation, or the moment Nicholas's fury spiraled into something unthinkable. Little did he know his wife was harboring a devastating secret that would destroy the world he thought he controlled. Nicholas Dayton was the embodiment of the American dream. Born in a struggling neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan, he climbed the ladder with relentless ambition. By his mid-30s, he owned Dayton Global, a powerhouse in tech, luxury hospitality, and philanthropic ventures. People admired his movie star good looks and envied his gilded lifestyle. Every morning, his personal chauffeur dropped him off at a 60-story glass tower in downtown Chicago bearing his company's name. There, employees whispered about his almost mythical work ethic. Always the first to arrive, the last to leave, polished, in control. Nicholas had the Midas touch. Every business he backed turned to gold. The media adored him, painting him as both a visionary tycoon and a devoted husband. His wife, Claire Dayton, née Lancaster, was the elegant daughter of real estate mogul William Lancaster. Their wedding, 2 years earlier, was a grand affair at the Chicago Cultural Center, attended by dignitaries, celebrities, and powerful figures from around the globe. Claire's every move exuded poise, earning her the nickname the Swan among elite circles. Her charity work, fundraising for children's hospitals and supporting women's shelters, won widespread admiration. When news of her pregnancy broke, tabloids celebrated the next chapter of the Dayton fairy tale. Editors competed for baby exclusives and nursery peeks. Paparazzi stalked every upscale OB/GYN clinic in the city, hoping to catch a glimpse of the couple holding ultrasound pictures. But even in this glamorous life, cracks began to appear. Claire noticed Nicholas's growing restlessness, his frequent business trips to Berlin that didn't line up with Dayton Global's public calendar, or his last-minute cancellations of their private dinners. She tried to justify it as the cost of success. After all, her own father had once sacrificed countless hours to build his empire. Perhaps Nicholas, too, was simply under pressure. But a quiet current of tension ran through their lives. Nicholas's mood had shifted, more irritable, emotionally distant, and evasive. He rarely joined her at prenatal appointments, often sending an assistant instead, citing urgent obligations. Claire brushed it off, reminding herself she could handle the pregnancy on her own if she had to. But fate had other plans. Unknown to Claire, Nicholas was keeping secrets. Office whispers hinted at a mysterious woman spotted leaving his private suite after hours, draped in luxury labels, Balenciaga, Dior, climbing into a sleek black town car that wasn't Claire's. The gossip swirled, but fear of Nicholas's wrath kept most quiet. Meanwhile, Claire continued her charity work, cradling her growing belly with grace, still clinging to the dream they'd built. But as the city moved around them, their destiny was already shifting. Toward betrayal, heartbreak, and revelations no one saw coming. The first to sense trouble was Danielle Price, Nicholas's longtime executive assistant, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 20s. Danielle had joined Dayton Global right out of business school and steadily earned Nicholas's trust. But recently, she'd noticed strange patterns: off-the-books meetings, luxury deliveries to unknown addresses, unexplainable credit card charges at restaurants she had never scheduled. One afternoon, she ran into Claire in the executive lounge. Claire looked pale, gently massaging her lower back. Pregnancy was wearing on her, but she maintained her usual elegance. Danielle approached cautiously. "Mrs. Dayton, how are you feeling?" Claire offered a tired but warm smile. "Just fatigued. Third trimester, right?" Danielle nodded, debating whether to speak further. There was something in Claire's eyes, an unspoken need for truth. "If you ever need anything, I'm here," she said, keeping her tone neutral. It wasn't the time or place to voice her suspicions. Claire gave a soft look of appreciation. "Thank you, Danielle. I'll remember that." The tension between them hung in the air, undefined but undeniable. That evening, Danielle found Nicholas in his office, rifling through paperwork with sharp, erratic focus. His tie hung loose, his tone clipped. "There's a red folder on your desk. Send it via courier, immediate delivery. Mark it private and confidential. The address is on the label," he said without looking up. Danielle blinked. "Sir, you mean our Berlin office at the Dayton Hotel property?" His gaze snapped up. "No, the Dayton Belmont, downtown Chicago." The Belmont was only a few blocks away. A courier seemed excessive. Still she nodded, not daring to press further. Once Nicholas left, Danielle examined the package. The name on the recipient label chilled her. Miss Giselle Marceau, a guest at the Belmont's penthouse suite. That name wasn't on any vendor list or business partnership. Danielle sealed the folder but couldn't silence the rising unease. Meanwhile, Claire's father, William Lancaster, was growing suspicious. A seasoned businessman, he had noticed subtle inconsistencies in Nicholas's recent ventures. Contracts once simple now came with complex clauses. William confronted him gently during a Lancaster Foundation dinner. "Son," he said, resting a hand on Nicholas's shoulder, "I've noticed you're expanding faster than ever. Are you overextending? Maybe take a break, especially with the baby coming." Nicholas forced a tight smile. "I appreciate the concern, sir, but I've got everything under control. Just wait, you'll see. Dayton Global's about to break into new territory." William, unconvinced, scanned the crowd for Claire. The weariness in her eyes confirmed his unease. Something was off. He just didn't yet know how deep the cracks ran. "Are you overextending? Maybe it's time for a breather, especially with a baby on the way," William Lancaster said gently, placing a hand on Nicholas's shoulder. Nicholas forced a thin smile. "I appreciate your concern, sir, but everything's under control. Just wait. I'm on the edge of a breakthrough that'll put Dayton Global on the global map like never before." William wasn't convinced. His eyes scanned the event space for Claire. The flicker of discomfort on her face confirmed the unease he felt. Behind the grace and luxury, something was undeniably off. Still, no one could predict just how deep the cracks ran. Whispers went unheard, subtle warnings were dismissed, and in the heart of Chicago, a tale of betrayal was hurtling toward a climax so explosive, even a city used to scandal would be shaken. Midweek, Nicholas stepped into a private elevator at the Belmont Hotel in River North. The elevator purred as it ascended to the top floor, where Giselle Marceau was waiting. She opened the door in a deep crimson satin robe, a smoky smile tugging at her lips. Exotic, assertive, Giselle was the kind of woman who seemed created to unravel powerful men. She claimed to be a French art dealer expanding into Chicago, but her visits with Nicholas rarely touched on anything remotely professional. "Darling," she purred, stepping aside so he could enter the suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering skyline. Ivory couches gleamed and her signature perfume clung to the air. Nicholas tossed his coat aside. His nerves were tight. He had canceled 2 high-level meetings just to be there, a risk his younger self would have never dared take. But Giselle's grip on him was intoxicating. She had a gift, one that made him forget obligations, his marriage, even his unborn child. "I can't stay long," he murmured, "but I needed to see you." Her laugh was low, velvet. "I'm flattered. I thought your wife had you on a shorter leash." He stiffened at the mention of Claire. "Let's not talk about her," he said sharply. Giselle raised a brow. "Your call." She slid her arms around his neck. "I have a surprise for you," she whispered, guiding him to a side table. A bottle of vintage champagne rested in a silver bucket. He eyed it, noting the label and its exorbitant price. "You really shouldn't have," he said with a smirk. She winked. "A toast to our next chapter. I'm flying to Europe soon for an auction. Maybe you'd like to turn it into a business trip? Paris or Rome?" The implication lingered, not just travel, but time away, together. Nicholas weighed the offer, guilt tugging at him. "We'll see," he mumbled as he popped the cork. They drank, eyes locked. The outside world faded, but Giselle had motives of her own. She casually probed him for details, about finances, company deals, his VIP connections. Power thrilled her. His name was a gateway, and she viewed their affair as a launchpad for her own ambitions. She sometimes studied her reflection in the suite's mirror, silently assuring herself she was still in control. After about an hour, Nicholas kissed her goodbye and stepped into the hallway, a wave of nerves rushing over him. What if someone saw me? He wondered. But he shook it off. He was Nicholas Dayton, untouchable. What he didn't realize was that in that exact moment, a young bellhop named Lucas Rivas spotted him. Lucas had recognized him from a gala months ago. And now, Lucas was about to make a phone call that would trigger the unraveling of Nicholas's secret life, sending shockwaves through everyone in his orbit, Claire, Giselle, and beyond. The following evening, Claire sat on the edge of their penthouse sofa, flipping through pages of nursery design ideas. She had chosen soft shades of mint and lavender, envisioning a calm, welcoming space for the baby. Nicholas, however, had contributed nothing, always citing work. When he finally walked through the door, tension clung to his frame. He glanced past the fabric swatches and baby magazines without a word. Claire's heart clenched. Still, she tried gently. "There's a gala next Friday for the Children's Hospital," she said. "I'm hosting. Can you come?" He loosened his tie, barely acknowledging her. "I don't know. I might be out of town." She set the magazine aside. "Out of town again? Where this time?" He gave her a sharp look. "I have to finalize an international deal. That's it." The tone was final. No more discussion. But Claire, holding back a flicker of anger, stayed composed. "You've been traveling constantly. Berlin, Toronto, even around Chicago. Hotels. Are all these trips really necessary?" Nicholas turned to her, eyes cold. "Are you prying now? Is that what marriage is? Me explaining my every move?" She closed her eyes for a second, steadying her voice. "It's not prying. I just want you present. I've gone to every doctor's appointment alone. The baby will be here in weeks. Don't you want to be around?" His jaw tightened. Guilt flickered, then vanished under his defenses. "I'm building a future, Claire. A future that includes this child. Or do you think money grows on trees? Without these deals, our life crumbles." She blinked away the sting of tears. "You've changed," she whispered. "Somewhere along the way, you became someone I don't recognize." He said nothing, just stared at her before abruptly turning and heading toward his study, leaving her standing in silence. She felt hollow from the chill that had grown between them. Inside his study, Nicholas collapsed into the leather chair. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows, a man divided, torn between Giselle's allure and Claire's steadfast love. Between his ambitions and the unborn child, he barely acknowledged. He tried not to think too hard. But the walls were already starting to close in. He tried not to dwell on it too much, but Nicholas felt trapped, suffocated by the very expectations he had built around himself. As he sat alone in the dark, Claire's phone buzzed on her nightstand. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. "I have information about your husband. We should talk. Lucas Rivas." Confusion flickered across her face. She didn't recognize the name, but something about the message stirred a deep, uneasy instinct. A mix of dread and steel resolve rose in her chest. She tapped the message open, her heart racing. Little did she know she was about to crack open the carefully guarded walls Nicholas had built to shield his double life. Early the next morning, Claire slipped into a quiet cafe tucked off a street in downtown Chicago. She wore a simple black trench coat and a loosely draped scarf to stay inconspicuous. In a corner booth, A young man in a bellhop uniform sat nervously stirring his coffee. His name tag read Lucas Rivas. When she approached, he stood quickly, almost too formally. "Mrs. Dayton, it's an honor to meet you." "Please, just call me Claire," she replied quietly, sliding into the booth. Lucas glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. I'm not sure how to say this. I saw your husband at the Belmont Hotel, several times, top floor suite." He swallowed. "I recognized him from the Dayton Foundation Gala last year, and he wasn't with you." Claire's face paled, her chest tightened, but she kept her composure. "You're sure it was him?" He nodded, then retrieved a phone from his pocket. With hesitant fingers, he tapped a few times and turned the screen to her. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but it was unmistakably Nicholas, stepping out of an elevator beside a striking brunette. Claire's hand went to her mouth. Her pulse thundered in her ears. A wave of nausea hit her, not from the pregnancy, but from the confirmation that the life she had clung to was a lie. Her mind scrambled, trying to reject what her eyes refused to deny. Her body felt suddenly too heavy, as if every breath had to be pulled through water. For a fleeting second, shame crept in. How could I not have seen this, she thought. Was I that desperate to hold on to a fantasy? The betrayal was cruel, but the self-doubt that followed cut even deeper. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, voice trembling. Lucas shifted uneasily. "My mom works housekeeping at the Belmont. They didn't treat her well there once. She's also a fan of yours. She volunteers at the same women's shelter you support." He looked down. "You seem kind. You deserve to know the truth." He paused before adding, "I heard the woman's name. She introduced herself as Giselle Marceau." Claire closed her eyes as the name echoed in her mind. Betrayal, humiliation, and a fierce protective instinct for her unborn child surged inside her. She inhaled deeply to steady herself. "Thank you for telling me. That couldn't have been easy." Lucas gave a slow nod, guilt and concern mixing in his eyes. "I just hope you'll do something. You deserve better." Claire reached into her purse and slid an envelope across the table. "I appreciate your honesty. Please, take this." He looked reluctant, but she insisted. After a moment, he accepted it with a respectful nod and stood to leave. As he turned, she gently touched his arm. "You've done me a kindness. Thank you." Outside, the city moved around her. Car horns blared, pedestrians hurried by, oblivious to the emotional storm raging inside her. Each step felt heavier than the last. The image of Nicholas with another woman, so bold, so careless, replayed again and again in her mind. But despite the heartbreak, a defiant spark lit within her. She was Claire Dayton, daughter of William Lancaster, a woman well-versed in power and diplomacy. She thought of the baby, of her father's legacy, of her philanthropic work. "I will not break," she told herself. She would gather proof, plan carefully, protect her child at all costs. The day after her secret meeting with Lucas, Claire scheduled an appointment with her father's longtime attorney, Monica Zhao. A formidable lawyer in her late 50s, Monica was known for her no-nonsense style and fierce loyalty to the Lancaster family. She greeted Claire warmly at a discreet law office near Michigan Avenue. "Claire, come in," she said, concern softening her voice. Once the door closed, Claire opened her phone and handed it over. Monica scrolled through the photos, her face tightening. "This is serious," she said. "An affair, especially during your pregnancy, could have major legal implications." She looked up. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" Claire's gaze was steady, but her voice cracked with the weight of recent nights. "He made promises, to me, to our baby. He's broken them. I'm not looking to destroy him, but I need to protect myself. And this child, I don't know yet if I want a divorce, but I need to understand my rights." She hesitated for a brief second, long enough for her voice to soften. "I thought, if I just stayed patient, he'd come back to me. I didn't want to be that woman, alone, pregnant, abandoned, but here I am." Monica's silence was understanding, not pitying. Claire straightened her back immediately. "And I won't let that define me." Monica nodded and pulled a folder from her briefcase. "Your prenup includes clauses about infidelity, abandonment, emotional harm. We can begin compiling evidence and secure protections, especially financial, for you and the baby. But Claire, these things can get messy." "I'm ready," Claire said, her jaw tightening. "I'm not going to be naive anymore. I won't let him or her tear this apart." Monica squeezed her hand. "We'll proceed carefully. Start tracking anything unusual, financial transfers, phone logs, sightings. I'll quietly order an internal audit on Nicholas's personal assets to see if funds are being funneled elsewhere. Claire left Monica's office that day with sadness hanging over her like fog, but also with a deep, glowing core of resolve. She clenched her fists as the cab pulled away, eyes burning, whispering to herself, "He chose her. Now I choose me." The betrayal had cut deep, but the fire inside her was stronger now. She would not go down quietly. Meanwhile, Nicholas had no idea the storm was already gathering. His wife was silently orchestrating her retaliation. But Nicholas was far too distracted, caught up in Giselle's growing demands for a European getaway and Claire's sudden emotional distance at home. Their dinners had become painfully silent. On the rare nights he even showed up. He made attempts at small talk, but Claire's responses were calm, distant, polite, and that stung far more than any outright anger. He wondered if she was just exhausted from the pregnancy or buried under her philanthropic commitments. Giselle, meanwhile, had grown bolder. She insisted Nicholas attend an upcoming art exhibition at her River North gallery, a flashy event meant to flaunt their affair in public. Nicholas refused, citing the risk of being spotted by media or society watchers. Giselle pouted, tension crackling between them. The tides were shifting, yet Nicholas remained unaware. He still believed he controlled the narrative, his empire, his wife, his mistress. But the illusion was nearing its breaking point. No fortress, no matter how fortified, can withstand betrayal and reckoning crashing into each other head-on. The unraveling began at a charity gala Claire co-chaired for the Lancaster Women's Shelter. The venue, the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel, adorned with chandeliers, marble floors, and elegant floral arrangements. Chicago's elite had gathered, politicians, celebrities, and the philanthropic upper crust. Claire, radiant in an emerald green gown, greeted guests with a gracious smile that masked the storm inside. She spotted her father, William Lancaster, near the silent auction table, lifting his martini in a discreet gesture of support. Then, she saw Nicholas, arriving nearly an hour late, trademark smirk in place, but his eyes avoided hers. To her astonishment, Giselle Marceau was there too. She had donated a rare painting to the auction and secured an invitation. Clad in a shimmering silver gown, she was impossible to miss, her beauty amplified by the tension her presence created. Claire's skin prickled at the sight of her. She steadied her breath, determined not to let the night unravel. But whispers spread as guests noticed Nicholas and Giselle exchanging glances, far too intimate for two supposed acquaintances. Claire carried on with her hostess duties, but each whisper stung like a slap. To make matters worse, Giselle deliberately sidled up to Nicholas at the bar, laughing too loudly. Danielle Price, who was assisting Nicholas that evening, took in the dynamics with concern. She moved discreetly to Claire's side and placed a hand gently on her arm. "I'm here if you need me," she whispered. Claire offered a small, strained smile. When it was time for the program's keynote, Claire took the stage to speak about women's empowerment and the shelter's mission. Her voice was composed, her delivery impeccable. But every line about dignity and safety for women felt aimed straight at the man who should have stood by her side. Mid-speech, her eyes caught Nicholas and Giselle whispering in a corner. A flash of rage burned through her, but she pushed forward, ending with a standing ovation. As she stepped off the stage, hoping to find a quiet spot backstage, Giselle brushed past her, elbow grazing Claire's pregnant belly, hard enough to cause a gasp of pain. It could have been an accident, or maybe not. Claire doubled over slightly, shocked. A jolt of fear struck her, swift and raw. Her arms flew to cradle her stomach, protective instinct overriding composure. Not the baby, her mind screamed. The pain wasn't sharp, but the violation, the threat, was enough to leave her breathless. For a split second, she wasn't at a gala. She was just a mother, frightened and alone. Nicholas rushed toward her, but instead of concern, he scowled. "Watch where you're going, Claire," he snapped, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Giselle stood behind him, a smug grin painting her lips. Tears prickled at Claire's eyes, but she didn't break. "My belly, you," she stammered, breath catching in her throat. The emotional weight nearly knocked the air from her lungs. Around them, the room fell silent. Cameras clicked. Phones rose discreetly. It was happening. Nicholas Dayton's carefully polished image was cracking. right in front of Chicago's elite. Claire rushed off the ballroom stage, heart pounding. One hand cradled her belly protectively as she navigated the ornate hallway toward the lobby. She needed air, a quiet place to breathe. But hurried footsteps followed. She turned. Nicholas, his face twisted in frustration. "What the hell was that scene back there?" he demanded, voice low but tight with fury. Claire, shaking, finally snapped. "Scene? I was giving a speech for abused and homeless women. While you," her voice quivered, "while you whispered with her and now I'm the problem?" He grabbed her arm. "Keep your voice down," he hissed. Eyes were already watching. Claire yanked her arm back, ignoring the pain. "Don't you dare touch me," she spat. "You're the one making a spectacle." "You're in public, Claire," he warned. "Don't do this." Before she could answer, a third figure joined them, Giselle, slinking forward with smug confidence. "Nicholas, darling," she cooed. "Is everything all right?" Her smirk said she relished every second of Claire's anguish. Claire turned on her. "You have no right to call him that. Not here. Not in front of me." The crowd was forming, shoulders turned discreetly, phones raised behind clutch bags. The spectacle was unfolding in full view now. William Lancaster was pushing through the onlookers, his face tight with dread. Nicholas, cornered, lashed out. "Stop acting like a victim, Claire. You don't know the pressure I'm under. The deals I have to manage. Giselle is—" But the rest of his sentence never landed. "I understand perfectly," Claire cut in. "You're a liar, a cheat." And then, something snapped inside him. Nicholas's hand struck her cheek. A loud, sharp slap. Gasps echoed off marble walls. Flashes lit up as cameras captured the moment of impact. Claire staggered back, her hand flying to her face. Everything slowed, her vision blurred, pain radiating across her cheek and deeper still, into her soul. The sound cracked through the marble lobby like a gunshot. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and cameras flashed, capturing the exact moment Nicholas's hand struck Claire's cheek. She staggered, hand flying to her burning face as the world around her slowed. In that moment of horror, everything paused. Giselle's smug expression melted into stunned disbelief. William Lancaster finally broke through the crowd, his voice a thunderous roar. In that single, violent act, Nicholas Dayton destroyed what remained of his golden image and catapulted Claire into a realm of heartbreak and fury she had never imagined. No one moved. The grand chandeliers seemed frozen in shock. Claire clutched her belly instinctively, heart thudding wildly as her vision blurred with tears. The baby. Her first thought was for the baby. William was the first to react. He shoved Nicholas back, voice echoing across the marble foyer. "Have you lost your mind?" He bellowed. "That's my daughter, you worthless bastard." The crowd parted. Some guests rushed toward Claire, others instinctively lifted their phones, unsure whether to film or call for help. A security guard hovered nearby, paralyzed by the escalating domestic scandal. Nicholas stood there, his face twisted in a mask of rage and disbelief. The adrenaline coursing through him made his chest heave. "She provoked me," he began, his voice hollow and desperate, but no one was buying it. Claire took a shaky breath and met his eyes with a coldness he had never seen before. Pressing her palm to her throbbing cheek, she spoke in a voice as sharp as glass. "You dare lay a hand on me? On your pregnant wife? You've crossed a line. There was no coming back." Giselle, now wide-eyed, began edging away, clearly trying to distance herself from the chaos she had helped ignite. William turned on her, eyes blazing. "And you, whoever you are, don't you dare come near my daughter again," he growled. Giselle shrank back, grabbed her clutch, and slipped into the crowd, which parted for her like the Red Sea. Before Nicholas could respond, William barked at the security guard. "Call an ambulance. My daughter is pregnant." The guard rushed to comply. But Claire, steadying herself despite the trembling in her limbs, straightened. "I don't need an ambulance," she said, her voice quivering but firm. "I just need to get away from him." William gently supported her as they moved toward the entrance. Outside, alerted by the disturbance, paparazzi swarmed. Camera flashes lit up the night as Claire emerged from the hotel, tear-streaked, with her furious father by her side. Nicholas stumbled after them, desperate to salvage control. "Claire, don't walk away. Let's just talk." She turned to him, eyes filled with disgust. "Don't you dare come near me." Her voice slammed the door shut on any illusion of reconciliation. She slid into the back of her father's waiting limousine. William followed, and the door shut with a definitive thud. The vehicle sped away, disappearing into Chicago's neon glow. Nicholas stood alone on the sidewalk, dazed. The cameras kept flashing, immortalizing his disgrace. Within minutes, the headlines would dominate every screen. Billionaire Nicholas Dayton slaps pregnant wife at charity gala. Mistress involved. Any chance of sympathy was obliterated by the avalanche of condemnation. At that moment, the empire he had built on charm and charisma began to crumble before his very eyes. Inside the limousine, Claire's vow echoed in her mind. Never again. He will never harm me or this child. 2 days later, Claire was holed up in her father's penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, protected from the media by private security. She stayed in a quiet bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But the view brought no peace. Her thoughts swirled. Betrayal, fury, grief. Monica Jo had arrived that evening with legal documents in hand and a resolute expression. William had insisted on filing assault charges, or at the very least, a restraining order. But Claire hadn't made up her mind yet. As Monica spoke with William in the adjacent living room, Claire's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Dayton, Claire, it's Danielle Price," the voice said quickly. I'm so sorry about everything." Claire's heart raced. "Danielle, just tell me." "I found something," Danielle said shakily. "I've worked for Nicholas for years. I stayed loyal because, well, he looked out for me. But after what he did, I can't stay silent." Claire closed her eyes, bracing. "I found emails, documents. Giselle, she's not just a mistress. She's using him to launder money, offshore accounts, fake investment fronts." Claire gasped. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. There are wire transfers, massive ones, taken directly from Dayton Global's charitable arms. Giselle convinced him the funds would support European expansion. It's all a sham. He was so infatuated, he didn't question it." Claire clutched her belly. Her mind spun. "This isn't just infidelity, it's criminal." "I'm sending the files to Monica Jo," Danielle continued. "They'll help you legally." Claire didn't speak. She was overwhelmed. "There's more," Danielle added. "I overheard a call between them last night. He was blaming her for the fallout. She threatened to expose him if he cut her off." Claire's breath caught. "Blackmail," Danielle whispered. "She's got receipts." Claire's knees buckled beneath the weight of the revelation. She had suspected Nicholas of betrayal. But this was treachery on a whole new scale. "Thank you, Danielle," she whispered. "You did the right thing." After ending the call, Claire summoned Monica Jo. The attorney listened closely, her eyes narrowing as the truth unraveled. "This changes everything," Monica said. "Nicholas isn't just facing assault charges. He could be implicated in serious financial crimes, and Giselle too. If you move forward with divorce, this evidence could secure you a substantial settlement and shield your father's name from the scandal." Claire felt a storm of emotions, anxiety, relief, and something else. A hard-edged resolve. Nicholas might have wrecked their marriage through betrayal and violence, but now she held a card he never saw coming. Proof of something far worse. The question now was how to play it. Meanwhile, inside his penthouse, Nicholas Dayton paced like a trapped predator. The fallout from his public assault on Claire had shattered his reputation overnight. Dayton Global's stock plummeted. Board members sent frantic messages. He ignored the media, his father-in-law, even his own mother. He locked himself inside. The only person he still communicated with was Giselle Marceau, who now demanded hush money. Their last phone call had been venomous. "You don't get to walk away from me, Nicholas," she had hissed. "If I go down, I'll take you with me. I have records of every wire transfer." He had snapped. "Don't threaten me. I can bury you." But the threat had lost its weight. He was in free fall, and Giselle knew it. She had played him masterfully, stroking his ego while executing her own scheme. Now the money she demanded was more than he could discreetly siphon from company funds without raising red flags. Alone in his disheveled office, Nicholas slammed his fist against the desk. Papers scattered, including a tabloid headline that chilled him. "Billionaire Dayton exposed. Violence against pregnant wife caught on camera." A photo of him mid-slap was splashed across the front page. In desperation, he dialed Claire's old number. It rang once before going to voicemail, likely changed or turned off. He tried William's number. No answer. Even Danielle Price had turned her back on him. He was isolated. The empire he had built, brick by golden brick, was now crumbling around him. He sat down and poured himself a stiff whiskey, ignoring the early hour. His hand trembled as he lifted the glass. The silence of the penthouse, which once felt like a kingdom, now echoed with a crushing hollowness. He stared at the liquor swirling inside, seeing nothing but what he had lost. Claire's trust, the baby he hadn't even held yet, the legacy he'd been so desperate to preserve. It all felt distant now, like a dream slipping into nightmare. He leaned back and for a long time did nothing, just listened to the air hum around him, a man surrounded by his own ruin. He told himself he never meant to hurt Claire. It was a moment of madness, not who he truly was. But the guilt clawed at him, haunting him with images of what he had done and what he stood to lose. His company, his child, any shred of self-respect. Then his phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line, Legal Proceedings, Joe Law Group. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Claire was filing for a protective order citing domestic abuse. She also requested an immediate freeze on select Dayton Global assets pending divorce negotiations. The letter alluded to potential criminal investigations into financial fraud. The final line struck like a hammer. We advise you to respond within 72 hours to avoid escalation. Nicholas's vision blurred. They know. The laundering, the transfers, Giselle's manipulation, it had all come to light. Panic twisted in his chest. He wanted to rage, to blame someone, anyone. But deep down he knew this downfall was his own doing. He turned to the city skyline, the same view he once believed he owned, and saw it now as a looming verdict. The reckoning had begun. Meanwhile, Claire sat quietly in her father's penthouse, high above Lake Shore Drive. Monica Zhou had just left, having finalized the initial legal filings. The protective order would be in effect by morning. The divorce papers, citing adultery and domestic violence, were nearly ready. An audit into Dayton Global's questionable transfers was already underway. Claire sat beside a large window, absent-mindedly stroking her belly. She was no longer the woman who once clung to a fragile marriage. She had faced the truth about Nicholas in the most brutal way imaginable. Now her every thought was focused on the path ahead. Still, beneath the surface strength, her body betrayed signs of fatigue. The nights were restless, haunted by flashes of the slap, the betrayal, the humiliation. Her doctor had warned her to manage her stress for the baby's sake. But how could she, when even sleep felt like an ambush? She placed her hand on her stomach again, this time whispering under her breath, "We'll be okay, I promise." A knock at the door startled her. William stepped in, his normally composed expression softened by concern. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. Claire offered a faint smile. "Better than I expected. The bruises are fading. The baby's doing fine. The doctor said everything looks stable." William nodded, relieved. "I know this must be unbearable." Claire looked out the window. "I never thought I'd end up here. Married to a man who would cheat, then hit me. But I can't dwell on that. I have to do what's right for this child and for myself." William hesitated. "There's something you should know. I called a few friends in the DA's office. If Nicholas's finances are tangled up in anything illegal, there could be charges. And if he tries to claim you provoked him, don't worry. We have eyewitness statements from the Gala." A flicker of relief crossed Claire's face. "Thank you, Dad. I appreciate you standing by me. All of this, it's still hard to believe. Our life collapsed so fast, it doesn't feel real." He wrapped an arm gently around her shoulders. "You're stronger than you know. You'll get through this." Claire leaned into the embrace. She thought back to when Nicholas was the charming man who used to make her laugh. That image now felt like a cruel illusion. Over the next few hours, she began putting her life in order. She wrote personal letters to a few trusted friends, letting them know she was safe but needed time. She called her philanthropic committees and handed off duties for upcoming events. When she called the women's shelter she co-chaired, the staff responded with unwavering support. Each small task helped her reclaim her footing. She was no longer just Nicholas Dayton's wife. She was a mother-to-be, a philanthropist, a woman reclaiming her dignity. Every step she took was a rung on a ladder out of despair, and she knew a final showdown was likely still ahead. But she wasn't afraid anymore. The man who tried to break her would soon discover the fiercest storms are endured by those who refuse to be swept away. 48 hours after Monica Zhao's email landed in his inbox, Nicholas Dayton stood outside William Lancaster's penthouse, flanked by two lawyers he had hastily retained. The building's doorman eyed him with wary recognition. The scandal had swept across Chicago. Still, he allowed Nicholas in, noting the meeting had been arranged through Zhou Law Group. Inside a softly lit living room, William, Monica, and Claire awaited. Claire sat poised on a velvet couch, posture regal despite the weight of her late pregnancy. The bruising on her cheek had faded to a faint yellow, but the memory of his slap was etched deep in her expression. And deeper still, buried beneath the surface, was a fatigue no makeup could hide. She hadn't slept through the night in days. Her spine ached constantly from tension. Her appetite flickered in and out. Yet here she sat, composed, collected, unwavering. Nicholas's lawyers offered stiff greetings. Monica's voice was crisp as she guided them to the dining table, layered with documents. "We're here to finalize the protective order, address the divorce proceedings, and confront the financial misconduct allegations." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "Allegations," he muttered bitterly. "Not proven." Monica tapped a folder in front of her. "These are records from Dayton Global's accounts, showing funds diverted into Giselle Marceau's shell companies. We also have her bank statements, tracing the money to offshore accounts in the Caymans. It won't take a jury long to draw conclusions." His face twisted. "I was misled. She said it was for European expansion." Claire spoke for the first time, her voice cool and composed. "And you pulled those funds from charitable foundations, Nicholas, money meant to help people. All for her, or for your ego?" Her gaze was level, but behind it flickered a memory of late nights spent drafting proposals for children's shelters, fundraising events where every dollar mattered. She'd defended his reputation more than once, believing he shared her values. Now she knew. He hadn't. Nicholas turned to her, something like regret flickering in his eyes. "Claire, you have to believe me. I never meant to hurt you." She stared straight through him. "Yet you did." His lawyers tried to steer the conversation. "We propose a private settlement and non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, Mr. Dayton is willing to surrender a portion of assets." Claire raised a hand, cutting him off. "No." Her voice was firm, resolute. "He lost the right to silence this. The divorce has been filed, and there will be no secrecy. Women, especially pregnant women, need to know that abusers don't get to hide behind money." Nicholas slumped in his chair, visibly defeated. "So this is it." Claire inhaled, steadying herself. "There's one more thing you need to know." He looked up, startled. William gave her a gentle nod, signaling her to go on. A heavy silence settled over the room as Claire squared her shoulders. "Nicholas, the baby I'm carrying, has a serious medical condition. I only found out after a recent test. He'll need specialized care, possibly surgery." Tears slid silently down her cheeks. But her voice didn't break, not this time. She had already cried, alone in the bathroom at midnight when the diagnosis came. She had already run the scenarios, imagined the NICU visits, the waiting rooms. What she hadn't imagined was doing it alone. But now she would. And she'd be ready. "All the money you squandered on Giselle, that's money our child desperately needs. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed his chance at a healthy life." Nicholas went pale, eyes drifting to her belly. I didn't know," he whispered, horror dawning on his face. He stumbled backward as the weight of her words sank in. Margaret's stern look said everything. The courts would show him no mercy. And for Claire, a powerful sense of closure bloomed. The truth was no longer hidden. Her heartbreak, her baby's condition, Nicholas's greed, it was all laid bare. And no matter what followed, she had reclaimed control of the story he tried to erase. In the weeks that followed, the legal reckoning was swift. Monica Zhou and her team leveraged every document Danielle Price had unearthed. The district attorney's office launched an investigation into Nicholas's financial misconduct. Giselle Marceau, sensing her time was up, fled the country, leaving Nicholas to face the consequences alone. Dayton Global's board voted to remove Nicholas as CEO. The company's once pristine reputation was in ruins. Stock prices crashed. Claire's civil lawsuit for damages, assault, emotional trauma, and misuse of philanthropic funds was underway. Public support rallied behind Claire. The pregnant woman left battered by a man once worshipped as a titan of industry. Yet amid the chaos, Claire found purpose. She began laying out a plan for her baby's care, assembling a team of specialists through her father's network. Donations poured in as she launched a campaign to raise awareness for other children facing similar conditions. Claire led the charge, transforming heartbreak into hope. William watched his daughter with pride. The quiet socialite of yesterday had become a woman of unshakable strength. Together, they restructured a portion of the Lancaster Foundation to focus on pediatric health. The new initiative bore the name of Claire's Unborn Son. On a crisp autumn morning, Claire gave birth to a baby boy. Though he required immediate intervention, doctors were optimistic. Monica Jo visited the hospital to deliver the final set of divorce documents. A judge had ruled in Claire's favor, granting full custody and freezing Nicholas's assets pending criminal investigation. Standing beside the hospital bassinet, Claire signed the final page. Later, she was wheeled out of the hospital with her son in her arms. Paparazzi lingered behind security barriers, hoping for a shot. But Claire didn't hide. She held her child close and met the cameras with unwavering calm. The next morning's headlines read, "Claire Dighton leaves hospital, triumphant, newborn stable after emergency care." A striking contrast to Nicholas's freefall from grace. Days later, Danielle Price visited William Lancaster's penthouse, shoulders heavy with apology. "I should have spoken up sooner," she said quietly. Claire only reached for her hand. "But you did. That's what matters." Danielle smiled faintly and handed over a box of baby gifts, small tokens from Dayton Global staff who had distanced themselves from Nicholas's fall. For Claire, it was a quiet, final moment of closure. She had survived. She had fought. She had rebuilt. And now she would rise. As for Nicholas, his future loomed grim. Court battles, financial collapse, and the crushing isolation of a man who realized too late the cost of his own ambition. Giselle never returned. She had drained him for everything and disappeared, leaving only wreckage behind. The city that once praised his brilliance now whispered his name with scorn, associating it only with scandal and disgrace. Claire, however, walked into a new chapter. With her baby in her arms and her father beside her, she embraced motherhood and advocacy, her scars a testament not of defeat but of endurance. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, a warrior, a woman who had seized back the narrative of her life and ensured her son's future would be founded not on lies but on love. And so ends the story of Nicholas Dayton and Claire Lancaster, a tale scarred by betrayal, abuse, and unchecked power. But from the ruins of a once glamorous union rose a stronger, wiser woman, devoted to her child and to the cause of justice. Claire's quiet resolve sent a message louder than any scandal. True strength lies in standing up to abuse, in protecting the vulnerable, and in refusing to let the past define the future. As Nicholas confronts the consequences of his fall, Claire moves forward, carrying the kind of courage only heartbreak and a mother's love can create. Dear friend, in the stillness after the storm, we are often left with pieces of pain, of truth, of ourselves. What Claire reminds us is this: we do not choose our trials, but we do choose our response. As the Stoics teach, what stands in the way becomes the way. Claire did not crumble beneath betrayal, she rose from it. Her story is not just about heartbreak or justice. It's about reclaiming dignity, protecting the innocent, and turning suffering into strength. So, whatever you're carrying today, let this be your reminder. Your past may shape you, but it does not own you. The fiercest strength is the kind that grows in silence, behind closed doors, and blooms when no one expects it. If this story moved you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to keep telling stories that matter, stories that remind us we are never truly alone.